everybody. It's Dave here, Darren over there. We are your two old bloggers. Been doing this publicly. That is commenting on your Minnesota Vikings for over 2.5 decades apiece. It's been a long time. But we're not giving up, and you shouldn't either, because we've got a lot to talk about. Today, we're going to start out with looking at the game from yesterday. Hey, the Vikings swept the 2024 preseason. We haven't done that in a long time. Now, everybody knows that doesn't mean squat, except for it does leave a good taste in their mouths. Let's get that winning taste to stay there all season long. Then we're going to talk about what happened this week in Vikingsland, which is a culmination of all the news and bits that came out during the week, and there's been a few interesting ones Darren would like to comment on, and I may even add my piece or two. And then we're going to finish up with both of us, final 53. Who makes it, who doesn't, and why we agree or disagree when it comes to that. All next on Two Old Bloggers. Let's rock! Vikings First and SKOL presents This Week in Vikingsland with Darren and Dave, your two old bloggers. Hey, everybody, I'd like to welcome you, Anthony, Dr. Adam, Big Raylin Dad. Good to see you here. Travis, David Rinaldi, yo, or should it be Yurt? Anthony is here as well. So is Daniel. So is Dave L. Great name, Dave. And, of course, Steven from way down under is also joining us today. And Chuck started everything off. Glad to have you all, including Travis. I see he's here as well. A ton of people. That's a good thing. So, Dalton Levi Prescott, welcome to the show. And there's Dalton. All right, everybody. We start out with the thumbnail, which talks about wins, standouts, controversies, and, of course, the Vikings sweep the preseason. And let's start with the latter in Theme 1. But first, I forgot to ask how Darren's doing. Darren, how you doing?
Little tired. Up late into the morning last night as the fastball season ended. Victorious for us. So, yeah, the younger guys were a little bit excited. And so I was
and you had to show them how to do it? Is that it?
No, it wasn't that. But, yeah, shouldn't really be blaming them. But I was doing, out late like I was 25 again instead of 50.
We've all done that a few times. I know I have. So, hey, cheers to everybody that's enjoying something today.
Indeed. Cheers.
Yesterday, did you get an opportunity to watch the full game?
I did.
That was your assignment. Yeah. Vikings won 26-3. Should have been more than that if somebody could have toe tapped, but it is what it is. What was your impressions?
I think the score gives a pretty fair indication of how the game went with the Vikings backups beating up on the Eagles backups. The Eagles did drive deep into our territory a few times at the turnovers and going for it on fourth down prevented them from getting a few more points. But, the biggest thing is a lot of one thing to watch for in these games, I'm sure you talked about it yesterday, is just who isn't playing, because the ones that aren't playing, that might indicate that their roster position is safe. So it was interesting that Caleb Evans was playing at times in that game,
Right.
as well as Fabian Moreau, although we'll get to that about the rosters a little bit later, and see where both of us land on whether Evans and Moreau are on the final 53. That Kene Nwangwu was not in the game, so
Right.
clearly he's made the team. They saw all they needed to see from him. The biggest thing for me last week, we talked about how Jaren Hall had played really well and bounced back from a pretty bad game against Las Vegas in the first preseason game, and then played really well last week against the Brownies. What I wanted to see was like, okay, but he only threw like 5 passes in that game. Was it just a hot stretch for him? Well, I wanted to see him get more volume. He got more volume yesterday, a lot more volume through the 21 passes or 25 passes, completed 17 of them, 189 yards, a couple of nice scrambles to extend plays and get some first downs, 2 touchdown passes. Was it perfect? No. He still looks kind of funny, I find, on some of the screen pass stuff. It looks like he's almost aiming it at times, but he showed nice touch on a lot of throws. A bit fortunate on that first drive where he had a throw sail on him a little bit, got intercepted, but that got negated by a defensive penalty. But overall, I wanted him to look decisive. I wanted him to look like he was in control of the offense. I wanted him to put positive, not go 3 and out. And the Vikings scored on, I think, all 5 of
the drives he was on.
5 of the drives he was on. I think he did look decisive. I thought the ball placement was much better than it had been even last week, and certainly way better than it had been in the week 1. And when you are looking when you're looking to develop a quarterback, and I think, and you're wanting to look in to see, okay, is he improved from his previous year, which was last year, would have been his rookie year, to this year, against the backups now in his second year with a full year plus in the Kevin O'Connell offense with all that coaching, he's got to stand out and dominate, even if he's playing with backups. And he did that yesterday. That's what you want to see from him, is just moving on the field. Looks like the best player on the field at that point in time. Jaren Hall did that. And I think that, and I think that solidified to me his spot on the 53 yesterday. And it's great to see the young guy show that he is improving, that he is getting better, and that there's hope that he can get even a little bit better and become what we were hoping, Dave, would be a guy that you could, at the least, becomes a good backup quarterback in the NFL. Somebody that when he goes in the game, he can keep the offense going and do a good job and win you some ball games. And Jaren Hall looks like he's progressing to being that kind of a player. So I thought it was really big yesterday for him to play like he did.
I thought so too. I thought he sailed his first couple passes, but then settled down, right? Especially after the interception was negated, he settled down. And
yes,
sort of like J.J. McCarthy in his first game, where he came out a little hot and juiced. That's what Hall looked like to me, but then he settled down and he was putting some good touch on the passes and putting them where they were catchable. And you've got to be able to do that as a quarterback. So I thought he did well. Now, I thought he had 2 more touchdowns than he did, but hey, I thought
he navigated the pocket pretty well at times. He did get sacked, I think, 3 times in that game, and a lot of that wasn't his fault. Rushers beat our guys, and he didn't have a whole lot of options. But I thought his maneuvering of the pocket, stepping up and creating some throwing lanes, even when he didn't have to scramble, was good. I think he made good decisions on when to check down and when not to check down, instead of just checking down all the time. So really was very happy with how he played. I don't imagine there were too many Viking fans that weren't happy with how he played.
And DMC Cart says he wasn't getting that many snaps in practice either. And that is 100% true as well. So he's making progress with what little he has. and that's a good thing. And, of course, Anthony asked why not keep Hall as QB2 and trade Mullins for capital and develop Corral. I don't know about Corral. Corral did nothing special for me, but that is a possibility. We'll get into that theme 3 when we talk about our 53-man roster.
Now, Anthony, I think the Mullins thing is just that even with what Hall did yesterday, would you really trust? I think we know that Mullins, when he goes in there, the offense is going to move. There's some scary stuff that happens in some of those snaps, but Mullins can get the job done and move the offense and score points. But I don't know if the Vikings, Kevin O'Connell, Wes Phillips, Josh McCown have the comfort level with that Hall can do that quite yet if he gets in an NFL game. And so that's why I think that when you look at, you don't have JJ McCarthy anymore for the season. You've got Sam Darnold. I think it would be risky to trade Nick Mullins right now with the way the quarterback room is with the Vikings. And Corral, I just think maybe he has some talent. He didn't really look that good yesterday. And he just hasn't been here long enough, I think, to have been given a fair shot. He doesn't know the offense. And I think that showed yesterday with the amount of run plays they called and the type of throws that he was asked to make when he did throw. Now, can you keep him on the practice squad? Possibly. He's not in high demand right now, and maybe you can develop him that way. But I would be pretty wary about trading Nick Mullins at this point in time.
Well, especially since we learned after the game that Hall was supposed to play up to the fourth quarter. He did not. He got pulled in the third, and it was due to a leg contusion, was the words that Coach O'Connell called it. And when I hear contusion out of Coach O'Connell's mouth, I always start to worry because that's one of his general deals, like tweak. We'll find out. But I did notice when I was doing the graphics for this, notice how Jaren Hall has extra padding around his legs. He's got his normal thigh pads, and they sit on some extra padding that goes from just above the knee, and then it wraps around on the hip. Now, I've seen extra padding around the hip and the tailbone and stuff like that because that is spots you want to protect, but I've never seen them over the thigh like that. That's interesting. But we'll find out. We'll find out here shortly, within 48 hours, I'm sure, what goes on that. Now, another player that had a good game, even though he wasn't in there very long, was Trishton Jackson. And he's had an outstanding preseason overall. Trishton recorded 2 catches for only 15 yards, but one of them was one of those touchdown catches. Yeah. And I think after that, the decision was made, Trishton, you're going to be the one of the wide receivers in the room. Go on. Off the field he came. So I was impressed with Trishton. We'll find out. I've
been impressed with him all 3 games.
Yeah, he's had a good preseason.
Which is why he's going to make the 53 because he's looked good. Hasn't dropped a pass as far as I can remember. Caught everything that went his way. Had 3 touchdowns in the 3, 1 touchdown each in each game, and just is open all the time. So if that doesn't get you on an NFL roster, I don't know what will.
Well, it's a question of whether he's going to be wide receiver 4 or 5, and we'll find out. Another player.
I think he showed enough. Yeah, I think he showed enough explosiveness and big playability that he would be your 4, and somebody else, I don't want to get into it, would be your number 5.
Okay. Another player that had a interesting game, 2 sacks, but other plays, it was like Andre Carter, right? One of our academy boys.
Indeed, yeah. I thought again. I don't think he played as well in this game as he did last week, Dave. When he didn't get any sacks, but he was making plays all over the field. But a guy that the Vikings are taking a long look at because he played a lot of snaps yesterday on edge, And he also played a lot on special teams and was in on some tackles there. I think he played well. He's been playing well on the coverage units on special teams and the punt and kickoff coverage units, as well as he's had two, I think, pretty good games, the last two preseason games. And I'm going to be talking about him in the 53 as well later on. But he helped his case yesterday.
Yep.
I
think. Did. Overall, he was getting beat, especially on his spin moves, and he needs to work on that. But he did get 2 sacks. Now, like Luke Braun says, you can't go necessarily about the good things on the box score and judge the entire game by it, because there may be 2 good things on the box score and a whole bunch of blah for the rest of it. So you got to be careful with that. But we'll find out. We'll get into that discussion on the 53, because he is definitely on that edge of whether he makes it or not.
And the Vikings run defense in the first quarter, the first couple of Eagles drives was not very good. And I didn't look at it closely, but perhaps Carter was partly responsible for that by not holding his edge. We know that he needs to get one of the things about when he was signed last year was he needed to get a bit stronger, as well as refine his pass rushing moves. I don't know if he doesn't look to me obviously any bigger as far as pound being a little heavier, but he might have gotten stronger in the past year, just being in an NFL weight room and doing this for a living every day, which he was not doing when he was at the academy.
Right. Well, very could be. That brings us to our next player, Mr. Jay Ward. Jay had a decent game yesterday. He was back at safety.
Yes, he was, which I thought was an interesting move by the Vikings, and shows that again, going to be talking about, he's another guy I'm going to be talking about later on. But I thought, he played completely, as far as I could tell, safety the whole time that he was in there yesterday, as opposed to where he'd been at corner the previous 2 preseasons game. And so I think that the experiment at corner maybe, at least for now, over for Jay Ward, and he's back at safety where I think he belongs. But what I liked about Ward yesterday was, he got that tip interception. I mean, it's good that he had awareness to pick that out of the air like he did and not run it out of the end zone. So that was good. But I found that I liked his tackling yesterday. And he comes in like a missile when he's tackling. Now he comes in low and he goes head first, which is a bit worrying. But for not a big guy, he takes down bigger guys, but he goes low on them. But anytime he got anywhere near a guy yesterday, it was tackle made, and that's important for Jay Ward because especially when he's at the safety position, because you got to come up and get guys on the ground, and he did that yesterday. Plus, he plays a lot again on special teams.
Yes, and he had a punt return yesterday that was halfway decent, if I remember. And by decent, I mean more than 10 yards.
Yes.
But tackling is a good skill. I mean, we'll get talking about McGlothern later, but he was the one, if I remember correctly, who had the sack. The blitz.
Yeah.
Wrapped around.
Just couldn't bring McKee down.
Couldn't bring him down. And to me, that should have been called in the grasp, because I said, like yesterday, the next time somebody does it, they're going to roll over on that ankle and snap it. But hey, it is what it is. Maybe they don't want to protect 3rd and 4th string quarterbacks. Who knows?
McKee is 6'6" and about 230 or 240, so he'd be a tough guy to bring down for a defensive back who's about 200 pounds or so, like McGlothern is.
Yeah. Hey, Anthony, you got to fill a 53-man roster. You can't call them all trash. So he's on the edge, and we'll get there. So then there was Kevin O'Connell on the mic yesterday. Did you see any of those clips?
No, because I was they had the feed, the Eagles feed, so I got all of their stuff. I didn't have the minute, so I didn't hear any of the stuff that he did. I heard he was outstanding on it, but you'll have to talk about that, Dave, because I didn't hear it at all. I just heard great things about it.
I wasn't thinking, because I was getting the Eagles feed as well, because NFL Plus, until about 2/3 the way through the third quarter, I went, oh shit, I'll just turn on iHeart because they're broadcasting the games. It's local, Minnesota broadcast, which you don't get during the regular season, and listen that way. And I did, and I heard a lot of fun stuff. And then I saw clips afterwards of Jets giving him crap on the sideline, yelling at him, hey, you got a mic today, don't you? And giving him grief, and he's trying to back off. It was fun. He had a good time. And the whole conversation about being able to see what's going on, listen to what's being called, because he wasn't calling plays yesterday. That was Wes Phillips. And I thought Wes Phillips had a good game yesterday calling plays. But how he worked the sidelines, how he worked with the referee, all that went exceptionally well, and it was fun to listen to. I wish we'd get more of it. It was an absolute blast. He's decent at it. That's, being on a mic and stuff like that. It was fun. It was just plain fun. And of course we're winning. Now, if we're losing, that may be different, but it was plain fun. And I really, really do like that the Vikings this preseason have mic'd up somebody during each of the games so far. So,
and they have, and when they had Justin Jefferson in game one, although he wasn't super complex about breaking down plays, but I thought that Jefferson was entertaining, and he was calling the plays as they were happening. I remember on the 2 touchdown passes that McCarthy threw, he's like, we got him, throw it, a player's perspective, right? But I think that it has been having those guys on, Justin Jefferson, Kevin O'Connell yesterday. I think Harrison Smith was last week.
Yep, Hitman was last week.
And we know Hitman's not the most loquacious dude, but even he seemed to do pretty well in that. Yeah, those I've always found these things kind of garbage segments, but if you get the right person in there, it can go from garbage to being very valuable. And it sounds like yesterday Kevin O'Connell's has been getting rave reviews for the way he broke down plays, trying to explain his thought process on game, calling plays, and that's the kind of stuff that fans just crave for.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it is. And one of the sections was how excited he was over Levi Drake Rodriguez. And you could feel it in his voice as he was talking about him. And it's stuff like that, how he cares, that just should make a fan, or can make a fan, feel good about being a fan, because it's a good thing to do. And I see G-Max saying Aussie. We got Aussie Viking in here along with Steve. So we got 2 from down under, and that's cool to have.
It is.
But
yeah, I would put Kevin O'Connell on again, another preseason. I don't want him in the regular season. He's got enough to worry about, and we need him to get those challenges right, and no one to challenge.
I don't mind him mic'd up as long as he's not talking to anybody, and we hear it after the fact, like they sometimes do.
Yes,
but we'll see. Now, special teams yesterday.
Well, it starts and ends with Will Reichard, right? Again, everything up the middle. And then he bangs that 57-yarder, which, they were just trying it to see how he did. Like, let's give him a long one. They might have let him try it if it was 60, really. And the game was well in hand. And not that it's a big deal to win in the preseason, but I couldn't quite make it out, but that looked like it would have been good. Another 5, 6. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It was well in hand. So 57-yarder, and hey, man, all he does is make field goals, right? Like everyone.
Hey, keep your fingers crossed. He only missed through all the off season. He missed 2, and it was all on the same day.
Mm-hmm.
All the rest, he's been 100%, and it's just that's unreal. He's hitting well over 95% of his kicks.
We'll take that. Yesterday,
knock on wood, it stays that way. Yes.
Yeah. Yesterday, they were pretty much all in the 30 to 35-yard range until 57-yarder. So that's been the longest attempt he's had by far in the preseason. Most of the others that I've watched have all been they haven't. I don't think he's tried a 40-plus 1 year, 40-plus field goal until he hit that one yesterday, the 57-yarder, the boomer. But we know his the leg strength. He's got it. We know that we've heard about him hitting from whatever it was, one that would have been good from 65 or more recently.
Or 70. And camp.
I don't. It's preseason, isn't regular season, but and the pressure isn't quite the same. But it's still a lot of pressure on him every time because, again, when a kicker misses, nobody's going to usually blame the snap or the hold. They're going to blame the kicker, and so there is pressure on Will Reichard, being a rookie, not established, and every time he goes up to kick, it's a referendum on him as a kicker, and so far he has not let that bother him one bit. It's just boom, 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 right through the uprights, through the middle, except for one extra point that was
blocked.
One field goal was blocked. One extra point that didn't go up the middle, it went in, but it was like a little bit it just squeezed through. Otherwise, he's just banging them straight through up the middle, and who doesn't love that? If you're a Vikings fan.
And I know there was, not last week, but the week before, I think it was, the beat writers were in with watching practice, and he was inside in the indoor facility. And they have a steel piece of structure that sits smack dab in the middle of the uprights behind it on the wall.
Yes.
And he kicked... what was it? This is like 6 or 7 times, and he hit that steel like 2 times, 2 or 4 times, smack in the middle. I mean, you're talking about a piece of steel that's this wide, and he's hitting it with a football from 40 yards. He's supposed to be a prodigy. Let's hope he stays that way. Vikings fans are a little wary of, kickers. Because we've been terrorized with them before, but we'll find out. Norris Fias, I agree. Dallas Gant looked good, and Myles Gaskin looked good as well.
Myles Gaskin really good yesterday. Now he had some sizable holes to run through at times, which is also good. Means the O-line, the backups were getting their work done too. But I liked his ability to jump cut. He'd stop on a dime and change direction. He looked really good, and he looked like a guy that you could, as I said last week or the week before, he looked like a guy that you could, if you need to use him, he can go in there and do the job for you. Maybe he's not going to bust one for an 80-yarder, but he's an NFL running back. Maybe not elite, but he can get the job done, and he had done the job in Miami for 3 years there. So. We'll get to him a little bit later too, but and I thought Gant, he looked good yesterday, but he looked. I watched the Browns game over about 3 or 4 times, and I thought he played really, really well against the Browns, and the Vikings trusted him in coverage a ton, in pass coverage, and he's around the ball, and he had showed good coverage skills the past 2 games to me as well. I think he needs to clean up his tackling a little bit. Like he does seem to have a tendency in the 2 games I've watched him closely is to bounce off guys that he's tackling and then not be able to wrap up. I think that's a weakness in his game, but I really like him. And he's not a guy I mentioned last week, who was on my radar at all as a player who I thought had some talent and might be able to be a contributor for the Vikings somewhere down the line in a year or 2.
I agree. Well, we didn't find out this year, or find out in previous years. We didn't find out until this year that Coach O'Connell hands out game balls for wins in the preseason. And Jaren Hall got his first game ball yesterday, and good for him. But it was good. Vikings win 26-3, and basically dominated during the whole game. But like I said, 3s versus 3s and 4s versus 4s.
Mhm.
Guys that the majority of them aren't going to be playing anymore after this. So
Before we move on, I did want to. We didn't talk about it earlier, Dave, but I'm getting pretty used to the way the kickoff is looking now, and that's becoming. I don't find it weird to look at anymore. But what has been noticeable is that maybe it's happened in other games, but certainly not any of the ones I've watched. I'm not seeing any really long kickoff returns at all. Like once they're hitting the wall, they're where the blockers and the guys covering the kickoff converge. You don't see the kickoff returners getting past that right now. So I think teams are trying to.
I've seen
they
a
got to
couple
work
that
on
have
the.
made it past the 50-yard line.
Yeah, but I mean, a couple.
Yeah.
You would think there would be a lot more. So I think that the teams either they're not showing. They've got to figure out the blocking on this and how that works, and maybe part of the problem is that now because you're using two returners to kick off, that's one less blocker that you have. So numbers matter. So maybe that might have a little bit to do with the offensive. The ones that are blocking are outnumbered a bit too much right now. So it'll be interesting to see how special teams coordinators, how creative they get on the kickoffs with the blocking to break some of these, because if you do get by that jumble of players, you could be gone, and there won't be anybody near you now. So,
except for the kicker.
Yes,
and they're worried about that because there's been kickers that have made tackles, and they're worried about injuring the kicker. Now, what I've noticed is, at least from our side, is that they'll try to kick it, right around the goal line-ish in the landing zone and see what the other team does.
Yes.
If the other team is having success, then they start kicking it a little bit deeper into the end zone, hoping they down it, and then it comes out at the 30, and they're willing to give them the 30. But I'm curious if it's a feel-out process that Daniels is using, or if he's holding stuff back, especially on the return side, of how he wants to play this. And it's just, they're experimenting, but not too drastically right now because they don't want to show anything. We'll find out. Now, they have, as of prior to this weekend, the new kickoff rules has increased returns by like 30 or 35% over what we had last year. But, of course, last year, everybody was just blasting through the end zone. We shall see, though. It's going to be interesting once it really gets going.
Daniel was asking if the receiving team can turn and look to see if it when the ball gets caught, which is a good question. I don't see why you couldn't, but
there's enough time to turn around and watch, and then turn your head and do your thing.
Yeah. So you can believe you can do that on the offensive line and not get called for like a legal procedure, right? If you're looking back, so I don't see why you couldn't do it while you were blocking on for kickoff.
I'm sure somebody's yelling too, as well as yelling go.
Of course, you also can see right ahead once the guys in front of you get going. You know that the ball, somebody has caught the ball from your team too. So yeah,
it's going to be interesting. Well, that gives us our quick and down and dirty wrap up from yesterday. And now we move on to theme 2. This week in Vikingsland, brought to you by Dave and Darren.
Yeah, I can get I'm going to dive into a few topics anyway based on stuff that happened this week in Minnesota Vikings with the Minnesota Vikings franchise. And first one I'm going to get at, had to talk about it, was Brian Flores and Tuagate. And I'm sure everybody on here has heard about it already, read all the comments. But for anybody who hasn't, or maybe you forgot, I guess to sum it all up, Tua went on a podcast and he called Brian Flores, and basically he said that Brian Flores was an idiot to him the whole 2 years that the two of them were together, and he pretty much blamed Flores for destroying his confidence and his play on, and the way he played on the field, and was quite happy to see that Brian Flores got shown the door. So that's that's a bit worrying, because you never want to see a player, a coach on your favorite team, and a coach in such an important position as a defensive coordinator, and be called a terrible person by some other player on another team, especially a high-profile player like Tua Tagovailoa. And that's worrisome, because if you've got a coach like that who is not very nice to the players, it's probably your players aren't going to take very well to that in the locker room. Might affect their performance too. So we don't want anything to do with that sort of situation. Now, Flores did, he had a presser this week. He spoke about it right away. He did not deny anything that Tua said. So does that mean that Brian Flores was an idiot to Tagovailoa and wasn't really very nice to him? And I don't know, but he didn't try to refute anything, and he did seem quite shaken by the whole thing. Just the way his voice was pretty shaky early on, but as the days go by, Dave, and we get some distance between what Tagovailoa said and what came out of it, I don't think that there's anything to worry about here at all, because I don't think that the player or the coach that Tua Tagovailoa worked under back then is not the same coach that is in Minnesota right now, coaching our defense. And pretty noteworthy that two guys up there, Josh Metellus and Harrison Phillips, when they made a point to come out and stand right by Brian Flores when he had his presser earlier this week and show their support to him. And then, I think also very noticeable, that's a big thing. And for me, I have not seen, there's a few reasons why I don't think Brian Flores is this ogre that Tua has painted him out to be, and is a terrible coach that you wouldn't want to work for if you were in this profession. In any media availability I've ever seen with Brian Flores since he's been in Minnesota, I have not seen 1 ounce of douchebaggery, caught a whiff of it at all. Now you can be coached to do that and hide that a bit, but if you're an asshole, Dave, eventually that's going to seep out.
Come out. Yeah,
it tends to come out. I have not felt that way at all. Flores looks like a straight shooter to me, and has worked very well and been worked very well in his media availability in his time with the Vikings. I also believe he's not the guy that Tua Tagovailoa encountered a couple of years ago, because you saw that Metellus and Phillips came out to support him. Then you had Phillips and Andrew Van Ginkel talk about the respect they have for Brian Flores as a coach, and Van Ginkel played under him in Miami. And so also, if Brian Flores was just horrible and a horrible guy, why would Van Ginkel and Stephon Gilmore, who both were coached by Brian Flores, why would they come here and sign with the Vikings if Brian Flores is just a terrible guy that you don't want to work with? They would not have done that. I know money talks in the NFL, but a work environment also talks, I think, too. And they would not have come here if they couldn't stand Brian Flores. And he's that type of coach that Tua Tagovailoa encountered. And even Jonathan Grenard, again, here's a guy that he hadn't been coached by Brian Flores before, but players, the NFL pipeline, you're telling me that Grenard is making a decision on whether he wants to sign with Minnesota or not. He's going to try to get a sense of what the work environment is, who's the coach that, what kind of person is Brian Flores if he's going to be his defensive coordinator. And the NFL player pipeline would give him some opinions on that pretty quick. And Jonathan Grenard got paid a lot of money, but he did decide to sign with the Vikings and play and be coached by Brian Flores. So I think that says a lot. I don't think, again, Kevin O'Connell, you had his picture up there a little bit earlier. He has developed a very player-centric kumbaya locker room culture. And I don't think if he's going to stand to have coaches on his team who are players despise, who players don't want to play under, and any type of coach who's ruining that locker room culture that he's built, he's not going to have it. And Brian Flores is still here. Kevin O'Connell hired him, and after a year, after working very closely with Brian Flores, Kevin O'Connell still has him here. So again, I think that's another big point that shows that Brian Flores is not a terrible coach. He's a great coach, and that he is not radioactive with the Minnesota Vikings right now.
And not with the players. Now, there was another quarterback that also came out and said some nasty things about him. But when it comes to defensive players, it's fine. And you can be a hard ass in your approach, in your leadership approach, as long as you're consistent. Because everybody can deal with consistency. Whether you're a powder puff, whether you're middle of the road or a hard ass, as long as your consistency, people can adjust and know exactly where you're coming from. So, and I'm sure he's learned over the time from, somebody had mentioned it, he was fighting with the owners at the time because they wanted him to tank. And then he went up to Pittsburgh. Well, we know Mike Tomlin's very aware and how he has his culture built. And I'm sure there was a little bit of mentorship there on top of that. And then he came here, and Kevin O'Connell's like, hey, this is the way I want to do it. You're going to have free reign to do all the wonderful things you do over here, but we're not going to go across any lines on when it comes to player relationships and stuff. We want to build these guys up, as they always say, to be the best person they can be. Mm-hmm. And I think that has helped, and people do grow. And I thought his response during the press conference was very mature, wishing Tua the best and all that. But it wasn't like he was trying to, I don't think, destroy Tua. He was trying to get him to the point as quickly as possible, the way he thought, to get him there. And you go through, it's a build down, build up thing. And it just didn't go over well. But
the one thing that this won't be good for Brian Flores, but one way this whole Tuagate could be good long term for the Vikings, though, Dave, is that we know Brian Flores has got this suit with the NFL on discrimination, and that he has not had any, I believe, head coaching
not this
interviews.
Not this last 24.
Yeah, season, no. He didn't have any in 2024, and he is not. And I think he has designs to be a head coach again. But this sort of thing, again, not great for Brian Flores, but it adds a little bit more to Flores' resume, I guess, on the negative side of things. And if that in any way, shape, or form prevents NFL owners from putting him on their short list of coaches that they want to interview for head coaching openings on their team in the future, that is going to be great for the Minnesota Vikings, because we thought Flores did a hell of a job last year with what he had with the defense. The expectation is they're going to take another step this year when they've got more talent and had another year of coaching under Flores. And so the longer, I think he is going to get a defense here that is top 10, that is as good as any in the NFL, but he can't do that if he's not the defensive coordinator and he's head coaching somewhere else. And so the longer that something like Tuagate, if that prevents him from being a head coach in the NFL,
and that lawsuit.
Yeah, that is great news for the Minnesota Vikings.
Yeah, because as long as
and beyond,
Kevin O'Connell can keep him as an established coach, oh, heck yes.
Yes.
Because you always want that. Zim had accused much of the same thing, but Zim kept losing offensive coordinators.
Mm-hmm.
And defensive coaches tend not to like the offense, and that comes from way back. Scott Spare's talking about Flus on the Bears, defensive coach, and their offensive woes. We'll see how that goes, but they've got the savior now, so we'll see. But it's G-Max talking about how Buddy Ryan was that way.
Mm-hmm.
Bill Parcells was that way. It's a whole mentality. But if it keeps him locked in as our defensive coordinator for a bunch of years, he and Kevin O'Connell together can do some wonderful things. If that's the case, if you're not worried about, hey, I got to replace my, at the opposite side of the ball, that coordinator every year. So that's a big bonus to the Minnesota Vikings, and I hope it stays that way. We'll find out. Anthony says if we were the Wolves and KOC, I would pay B-Flow like a head coach or close to it. I think they already are. Anthony, I don't know what the top dollar is, and that'll probably go up once Kevin O'Connell gets his extension, if he gets an extension, which I think will happen. It's just a matter of when. But we'll find out. Well, that brings us to the next topic in this week, and that's, we talked last week that Stephon Gilmore got signed.
Yeah, and he put his name on the dotted line early this week. I found out 1-year deal, $7 million, I believe, fully guaranteed. So that got done.
Up to 10.
Yeah, make up to 10. That got done. But at the same time, I noticed that people may have saw it that at the same after Gilmore got signed on the dotted line, the Carolina Panthers then traded for Seattle cornerback Michael Jackson, and they probably did that because they lost out on getting Gilmore, who they were interested in acquiring. But according to the Panthers beat writer on ESPN, he said while the Panthers were very interested in Gilmore, they didn't have the salary cap to be seriously competitive, to give an offer that Gilmore would accept, which is really, I think, interesting because are you telling me that the Minnesota Vikings actually were able to outbid somebody for a free agent? That is not something we've heard in the past few off-season.
Long time.
And so that brings me to our general manager, Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, and if the Vikings salary cap has not been very flush in previous off seasons, even last off season, if this had been last year in 2023 or 2022 or 2021, the Vikings would have been in the position that the Carolina Panthers were in this year, where they wanted a player, they needed a player, but they didn't have the cash to sign that player. Well, Kwesi Adofo-Mensah has been going to work on our salary cap situation since he became GM, and with the way the salary cap, he has cleaned it up. We're going to be flush with cap space next year. And even this year, in the past, the Vikings didn't even have, not only could they not compete for somebody like Gilmore late in, before the regular season started, they often barely had enough money for a rainy day fund to sign any veterans if somebody got hurt. Well, look at the over cap right now. I think that's got the Gilmore contract
I pulled that yesterday.
So yeah, they've got a rainy day fund and more, and they were able to sign Stephon Gilmore because of what Kwesi Adofo-Mensah has been doing to fix our salary cap issue. And so I wanted to give him a shout out for that. I know that there's a lot of Viking fans who don't think Kwesi Adofo-Mensah is a good general manager. I'm not one of those, but there are plenty. Yes, he's got to be a better drafter, but when it comes to fixing our salary cap situation, which I'm sure was one of his marching orders when the Wolves hired him, he has done that and some. And so I wanted to give him a shout out for doing that and giving us the ability to help our team at this point in the season.
Yeah, and that number will go down a little bit because that's top 51. As soon as we hit the 53, we're paying the 53 and the practice squad as those guys go up. So they eat into it a bit, but it still should be around $10 million. And having that as a rainy day fund is sweet, because if it's there if you need it, and if you don't need it, it rolls over to next year and it just adds to next year's. When free agency, we hope to hit targets in free agency. However, some of them that I've been targeting have signed extensions.
Yes.
Them bastards.
Creed Humphrey.
Yeah.
Hashtag Creed Humphrey.
But I think it's great to have Stephon Gilmore there. Now, Scottish Bear talked about how the Bears have a top 10 secondary in the league, and they do. They've got a really, really good defensive secondary. The Vikings, what I worry about is our corners, and Harrison Hitman Smith are up there in age. They're not too terribly old. No. Hitman and Gilmore are, but all the corners, the starting ones, whether it be Shaquille or Murphy or here with Stephon, their contracts are done this year. This is it. So hopefully, but they built it with Gilmore with a couple of void years. So hopefully, and there's not a whole lot of money there, but it gives them a little bit of control to say, hey, we want to negotiate with you to extend you if we want you here at 35, whatever. I think it's a good move. Is he the defensive stud of what he was when he won Defensive Player of the Year? No. But he's got the wisdom like Hitman does, like Patrick Peterson did a couple years ago. I think that'll help, and I think it'll help turn a corner when we don't have that many young players developing, especially in the corner spot, because one went out with the ACL and the other one passed away. So we'll find out. I thought it was good. And what Kwesi's done with the team and the contracts. We go back to that slide. There's $58 freaking million in dead cap we're spending, over $58 million. So get that back, or the majority of it back next year. That's going to help. Except for Creed Humphrey. Anyways, Dave's a little frustrated over that. Dave wanted the top offensive center coming off his first contract. Didn't get it. Now, you wanted to talk about 2024 draft class.
Yeah, just I wanted to talk about it because the guy in the picture, J.J. McCarthy, our 10th overall pick, obviously not playing this year with the meniscus injury. But
we're excited because he shows he can be the franchise quarterback.
Yeah. But you wanted to talk about the draft class because just taking stock of now the preseason is over, what can we expect to get out of this 7-person draft class, and who is going to be the impact rookie or rookies out of this draft class? It's not going to be J.J. McCarthy. It likely might not have been anyway if Darren plays as well as we hope he does. He might not have had to play at all this year, but he's out for the year. So if he's not going to play. Unfortunately, the 4th rounder, Kyrie Jackson, tragically passes away in a car accident. He will not be contributing to the Vikings this year or any year. And RIP Kyrie Jackson. So who else is going to be the impact rookie? Well, clearly Dallas Turner at number 17. He's going to be the big one, and he's looked good in training.
The big one of 2.
Yes, eventually. We just got to wait a year for the big 2 to.
That'd be a big one of 3.
Oh, I think I know what you're putting down here, Dave. But with Dallas Turner, he looked good in his Las Vegas game, a bit quieter in the Brownies game. He did not play yesterday, but he was a bit quieter in the Brownies game. But I think Brian Flores had Turner, he was trying to get him to do some different stuff. He had him dropping into coverage a fair bit on the short amount of snaps he had against the Browns. But he had a good week, good 2 days of joint practices against the Browns before that. It looks very promising that Dallas Turner is going to make an impact on the Vikings. Might not be a starter, but he's going to play a lot of snaps, and I think they're going to be quality snaps. So, yeah, that's great. But out after him, who is it going to be? Because after him, it's all a bunch of day 3 guys, Dave. And that's kind of that's what you got to live with when you trade as much draft capital as you did to get Dallas Turner and J.J. McCarthy, as well as you traded for T.J. Hawkinson 2 years ago. And so out of all of that stuff, you didn't have a second rounder. You didn't have a third rounder. You traded away 1 or 2 of your fourth rounders in this draft 2024. So you only had the one, and that was Kyrie Jackson. So outside of Dallas Turner, who could it be that's going to have a big impact? Well, Walter Rouse. I think he's been pretty solid in preseason. He's played a lot. I gave up a bad sack yesterday, but that happens. But I think he's going to make the team, but he's probably a guy who's a swing. He's the backup left tackle. Hopefully he doesn't have to play at all any offensive snaps. The Vikings certainly hope that he doesn't see the field this year as a rookie. His impact is going to be, I think, very minimal in his rookie year. Walter Rouse. So there's one. I think Michael Juergens, the 7th rounder, he struggled in pass blocking in particular. Will he make the team? We'll get into that a little bit later. But another guy the Vikings hope they don't have to use this year on any offensive snaps unless it's due to injury. So he's not going to have an impact this year as a rookie, and you wouldn't expect him to. He was a 7th rounder. Levi Drake Rodriguez. Everybody loves him. Folk hero in Minnesota, and we know the motor is red hot. We know that he's been able to make plays with that motor. That he's disruptive in there, but he's going to make the team. I'm pretty sure of it. But is he a 10 defensive snap a game guy? Is he 10 to 15 defensive snap game? I kind of see where at least that's where it's going to start. I'm not convinced yet that he's going to make a major impact on the Vikings defense this year. But Dave, you might disagree. But again, 7th rounder, our last pick in the 2024 draft. Nobody was expecting that these guys would make an impact, but that's who you have. So if you get through all of that, just Dallas Turner, really the guy that's going to have the biggest impact is going to be this guy, Will Reichard, banging 57-yard field goals, everything up through the middle. A 6th rounder, but hey, man, if the Vikings, if they're as good as we think they're going to be this year, or we hope they're going to be, they're probably going to play because with the defense being strong, the quarterback situation being what it is with the Vikings right now, with Sam Darnold as your starter, and you're not really sure what you're going to get out of him. How well will the offense click and move with Darnold as your starter? We don't know. We expect that the Vikings offense might not be, at least at the beginning of the year, as good as it's been in previous years when Kirk Cousins was your quarterback. Might not be as productive, might not be able to score as many touchdowns consistently, put as many points on the board. But I think games are going to be close. And if they're close and you got an offense that struggles to, because a quarterback played chiefly to put the ball and, put it in the end zone on a consistent basis, you're going to be kicking a lot of field goals. And the difference between winning and losing those games is a field goal kicker might miss 1 or 2 of those 3 or 4 attempts per game. Well, Will Reichard, I think, is going to have a huge impact on the Vikings season this year and the record that we have, because if he's making all the kicks like he's been making them in preseason, he's going to win us a lot of ball games. If he misses some of those, that's going to cost us some games. So either way, Will Reichard, I think, is going to have a huge impact on the Vikings, maybe even more so than Dallas Turner in a lot of ways.
Well, a kicker scores generally a third of the points in a season. Mm-hmm. So the better one you have, it could mean 2 or 3 game win difference on having a real good one versus what we had last year.
Yes.
And literally, that's how much they mean to the team. And if we got this prodigy, keep it up, young man. Keep it up. I don't care what you look like, how you look, whatever. Just bang that ball through the middle of them uprights. But David Winter asks, what's the realistic expectations for Dallas Turner?
I don't think he's going to have I hope to be proven wrong. I don't think he's going to be like Micah Parsons' rookie year, just terrorizing everybody. But I expect that he'll be like a 25, 30 snap defensive snap guy consistently. And I'm thinking my under on, I think that he's going to get 8 to 8.5 sacks as a rookie. I think I heard this week on Score North where they're talking about some of the online betting have him as a favorite to be defensive rookie of the year right now. And I think Latu up in Indianapolis apparently is looking pretty good too. So I think he's going to challenge Turner for that and somebody else. Will it be Arnold from the Detroit Lions, the corner? Will it be somebody else? But that's my guesstimate right now is like Turner's going to get 8 to 8.5 sacks this year in a quote unquote reserve role where he's behind Van Ginkel and Grenard.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Aaron says, have we seen any great flashes? We've seen some flashes and been reported on some flashes about him, but let's rock and roll here in 2 weeks and find out some more. All right. Speaking of which, before getting to 2 weeks from now, we have to go into theme 3 and talk about making the final 53.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you want to start? Let's start at quarterback.
We will. Sounds like a good place to do it. I've got us keeping 3, and it's going to be Darnold, Mullins, and Jaren Hall with his performance the last 2 games. The Vikings, Kevin O'Connell is going to consider it too risky to put him on the practice squad and risk losing him. And as I mentioned last week, with the way the quarterback carousel they had last year when they had to use 4, I don't think Kevin O'Connell wants a repeat of that and doesn't want to have to be forced into a situation where he has to make a trade for a Josh Dobbs kind of player mid-season because of injuries at quarterback, or you sign somebody like Ryan Tannehill off the street because of injuries, and I don't think he wants that. And I also think that they really they drafted Hall. I'm sure they put a ton of work in developing him last year on and off the field. And with the way he has shown his strong play in the last 2 preseason games, I think that would confirm what I believe Kevin O'Connell would have saw in practices that we don't see, is that the improvement that Jaren Hall is showing as a professional. And I think Kevin O'Connell want to keep building on that, which is why you don't want to have another team snap him up and sign him to their active roster when you could have. So that's why I think they keep 3, even though they hope that Jaren Hall never sees the field this year.
I saw a tweet. I didn't send it to you. I sent it to the NFC North guys. It was by Phil Simms. I think that's the younger one that works with Pro Football Talk.
Mike Florio, yeah. Chris Simms, yeah.
Chris Simms, Phil's dad. Chris Simms said there's 6 or 7 teams he listed that are, if their starting quarterback gets out, they don't have a quality backup, period. Mm-hmm. Their season's trashed. One of them was the Jets with Aaron Rodgers. One was Detroit with Jared Goff. They don't have much behind him. Now, one I didn't see was Green Bay. I don't think there's anything special behind the Green Bay quarterback.
They got Clifford and Michael Pratt, the rookie from Tulane.
And when I watched them against Denver, they look like bleh. I thought our backup quarterbacks look a lot better in that shape. So, question is, if they do decide to go with just 2 quarterbacks, with Darnold and Hall, because McCarthy's done for the season. He's out. There's no bringing him back. As much as I may want, there's none. they go Darnold and Mullins, and they decide, we'll see if we can get Hall to waivers. There's a high likelihood he gets snatched up, I would think. Now, yesterday with being pulled out for a leg contusion, I wondered if they're going to stick him on PUP or IR right now and get him through all this cycle. Say, hey, he's got a leg contusion. Can't play for a few weeks anyway, so stick him on the medical status. And then once he's off the medical status, they could put Hall on the practice squad at that time. It's an interesting thought. I don't know if they're going to do it, or otherwise I think he's made the team squad as well. It's just when we start playing with numbers and other positions, how they want to massage that, it's going to be interesting, because I do believe there's plenty of teams out there that could use a good number 2 quarterback, a backup quarterback that would be willing to take him, even though he's been trained in the O'Connell offense. So you might think of, San Francisco or any of the variety of the LaFleur, Shanahan style offenses would be able to snag him up, and he'd be pretty close. But we'll find out. I don't think they're going to expose him to waivers, because if they do, it'll be gone. But we'll find out.
Anthony agrees with you.
Yeah.
On one.
It's a way they could play it if they don't bring him on and say, hey, he's the 53, he's only got a bruise, and we'll go with that. But we'll find out. Scottish Bears hoping a few corners get cut. We'll find out. It's good. All right, wide receiver. 1, Justin Jefferson. 2, Jordan Addison. 3.
Well, that's Jalen Naylor. I think even with Trishton Jackson, and Naylor didn't play yesterday, neither did Powell. So that tells me that those guys are your number 3 and 4s.
4.
Trishton Jackson's a lock. And I think Trent Sherfield, they're going to keep 6. They're going to keep 6, with Trent Sherfield being the 6th guy, because Sherfield's a pro, and he's shown he can catch a ball, and he's a pretty good run blocker too, which you can't say for some of our other wide receivers, where I think, and Kevin O'Connell, coming from the Sean McVay coaching tree, they value wide receivers who can block. So I think Sherfield's they're going to keep 6, and Sherfield and Jackson will be the last 2 of those 6.
Okay. I'll buy that for $1. Running backs. Aaron Jones, obviously the starter.
Yep. Ty Chandler, obviously running back 1B. And Kene Nwangwu is going to be running back 3. CJ Ham gets kept as the only fullback on the team. And Myles Gaskin, McBride, even Mo Ibrahim. I think Gaskin, they'll try to keep him he'll be a practice squad guy, and I'm sure he'll get elevated. And he'll be elevated as well on game days from time to time. I don't think that they'll even keep McBride on the practice squad. I think that they'll like, even Ibrahim, in the short time that he played, he just looks a lot more explosive than McBride does. But then the same type of tough between the tackles kind of runner as McBride is. I just think McBride has shown he's nothing special in two preseason go rounds now with the Vikings, and I think he's just going to get cut and not signed to the practice squad. And Gaskin and Ibrahim, if they will be guys, they will try to keep on the practice squad.
Mm-hmm. Okay, now we'll get to tight ends. This is an interesting one. Obviously, TJ Hawkinson's going to start on the IR, I believe, or PUP, yes. One of the 2.
And so you're going to have Josh Oliver, Nick Muse, and Johnny Munt are going to be the 3 that they keep at this point in time. I think, and Munt is your pass catching tight end, and Oliver is your blocking tight end, and Muse will be worked in, maybe get the odd snap. I don't think Tunyon's going to make it, just because you can't make the club if you're in the tub, as Mike Zimmer used to say, and he has not been on the field in some time, didn't play in any of the preseason games. was listening to some podcasts where there's some speculation that, or maybe actually you were talking about this, I think with Tyler, was just that maybe his body is just shot right now at this point, and he just can't play football anymore due to injuries. So he won't be there. N'Keal Harry, I think they may try to keep him around on the practice squad, but he's certainly not going to make the final 53 there. But a guy that they can continue to develop in the tight end role. And if they need to bring him up, they can. If they get some more injuries to the tight end room, then N'Keal Harry could be somebody you could add in there and feel comfortable with. But I think they keep 3 at this point in time, and those are the 3 that they keep.
Okay. Do they keep Sammis Reyes? He doesn't count towards anything. It doesn't cost them to keep him.
I think that they might. Yes, I got to say, if he doesn't actually count, right? Because he's an international.
Yeah, he's the international player, so he doesn't count towards any totals. He's a freebie.
Some of the post-practice write-ups have mentioned him a few times as looking as an intriguing player, but I don't know if they keep him. I just haven't seen much from him, good or bad.
Everything I'm hearing, he's got a long way to go if he's ever going to get close, but they may just do it for, the public relations portion of it. But like I said, He's a freebie. He doesn't count towards anything. They can keep him on the roster and keep developing him over the year, and it doesn't cost the Vikings anything in the way of roster spots. They'll have to pay him, but I mean, other than that, that's the way that is.
Mm-hmm.
Tackles, offensive tackles. Keeping 3 or 4?
We'll keep 4. So Darren O'Neal obviously making the team. Quesenberry is going to make the team because he was your swing tackle last year, and every time we've asked him to play, including the preseason, he looks solid to me. So he stays. I think Walter Rouse makes the team as well as a young developmental tackle. So they keep 4 tackles, and those are the 4 that they're going to keep.
Okay. Interior O-line. How many are you keeping?
So what we got? I'm going to keep 5. I've got us keeping 9 in total. So I think that. So you got Bradbury in there. You've got Blake Brandel, Ed Ingram there. Ingram didn't play yesterday, so I guess his roster spot is safe. And I think they're going to keep Jurgens, even though he has had struggles. I think that they do like him, and it would be between him and really, what's your other options? Delton really liked Tyrese Robinson, and I'm just not convinced the Vikings are going to want to keep him on there. They certainly might keep him on the practice squad, and I think Dalton Reisner is actually going to stay with the 53, even though he's been injured, unless he's got an injury that the Vikings feel that he will not be able to play for a long time, and then they might have an injury settlement. But until I hear that, I think they're going to keep him because he's experienced. And if Brandel or Ingram either are ineffective or they get injured, you want an experienced guy who started in the NFL as to plug in there, and Dalton Reisner is that guy. So I've got him making the team.
Speaking of injuries, Dan Feeney, who I expected to beat out Reisner, because I don't think Reisner's making the squad. That's where we differ on this one. Is supposedly injured as well.
Yes.
And that's a shame because Dan Feeney can play both guard and center just like Jurgens can.
Yeah.
It went from suddenly having depth to, oh no, what happens if this guy gets hurt? So it's going to be interesting come Tuesday. But that's your offense that you've broken down. Now to the defense. Safeties. How many are you keeping?
5. I'm keeping 5. They kept 6 last year. Najee Thompson was going to be one of the safety room, but he ain't playing this year.
IR.
On the IR.
Out for this season.
So no big surprise here. They Metellus, Hitman, Cam Bynum, Theo Jackson. Those are your 4. The 5th guy they're keeping is Jay Ward. I wouldn't have thought that. Maybe even last week, but I thought he did enough yesterday. And the fact that they moved him back to safety and not at corner, I think shows that, and he's a 4th rounder last year. I don't think they're ready to give up on him. He does have some talent. And I think that he sticks on the team. Lewis Cine does not. Neither does Bobby McCain. And I don't know. Hopefully they'll be able to get something for Cine and not just have to cut him outright and have a wasted draft pick there. But I don't see Cine sticking with the Vikings.
Okay. Well, as I was telling Ant at the very beginning of the show, you've got to be able to, because he suggests trade Cine, trade Mullins, trade whoever. You've got to be able to find a trade partner. And you got to remember the 31 other teams are also cutting down from 90 to 53, and they probably have a couple of players they want to trade off as well, if possible. Now, if Kwesi can work something and get 7th, conditional 6th, whatever, all for it. Go for it. But whether he's going to or not, I don't know. And as I said yesterday, the problem with Cine is the pride factor. He's their very first draft pick. And they want to give him the longest leash possible to develop. We'll see. I don't think he didn't do squat yesterday. He was out there almost the whole game, and he was almost invisible. He messed up on one play. I didn't see him. I got into this with Tyler. Tyler thought, oh, he wasn't seen, so it must have been good. And I'm like, no. I saw him times run the wrong way, type deal. It was not good. But who cares? It is what it is. We'll find out by Tuesday, 3:00 Central.
We will. And he really needed to put in something similar to what he did last week against the Browns to have any chance of sticking with the Vikings again. And also build up that trade value, Lewis, by getting another sack and a couple of INTs and a couple of big hits. But he was pretty quiet yesterday. And sometimes that's the way it goes at safety. Like the play just, the action doesn't just come your way in as much as you would like. But yeah.
Corners.
I got us keeping 6. And no surprise, I think that, Griffin, Gilmore, Murphy Jr. I think Caleb Evans is also going to be staying because they lack for better options. I think Fabian Moreau is going to stick. And I think Dwight McGlothern, the rookie undrafted rookie free agent, is going to stick as well, that they won't try to stash him on the practice squad, that he will make the club.
Okay, I agree with McGlothern. Obviously, Murphy, Griffin, etc., and Gilmore as we got. But other than McGlothern, I'm not happy with Evans. I'm not happy with Moreau. Obviously, not Duke Shelley hasn't done anything. AJ Green, there's a whole bunch of meh. And then keep the young ones and develop them. Can Evans be developed more? If he has that upside, do that. I think McGlothern makes it because there's obvious signs of that. Aaron talks about other teams cutting people that we might want to pick up in place. That's a possibility too, especially here. The quarters have always been my worry. It seems one of the weakest rooms in the building, and we'll see how it did. Yeah, Giotano says, Evans was playing yesterday. That's playing with the 3s and the 4s.
He didn't play a lot, though, so I don't know what that actually says. But yes, he did play yesterday, which shows that the Vikings are either trying to send him a message or they wanted to see him do something good, even if it was against 3s and 4s. He did make one good pass block up, break up, I think, near our in the red zone and our red zone. So he did do that I noticed, but otherwise it was pretty quiet for him. And sometimes as a corner, a lot of times as a corner, and quiet time is good for you. It means you weren't targeted. Nobody tried to run your way, that sort of thing. But yeah, and Aaron talking about picking up other players. I'm sure the Vikings will take a long look at what's available on the corner market, and the six that make it, of course, and this, you could say this about a lot of positions on the Vikings, but the six, whoever is named to the 53 on Tuesday, that doesn't mean 2 or 3 days from
because we
now.
call it the final 53, there'll be changes within the next 48 hours.
Yes. So where that will come from, well, that'll depend on who's available that the Vikings like and think can help the team, and what they think about the various positional units and the depth or lack thereof of those positional units.
Mm-hmm. And as Aaron said, Andrew Booth Jr. got beat twice in his game.
I thought he was doing so well over there last week.
Aaron says Zim's wondering about that trade. And he very well may be, but that's what front offices do. There's him. You had people traded out from under you, and you got a little pissed off at it. So outside linebackers, i.e. the edges.
Yeah, I got us keeping 5 here, and this is where some people are going to disagree with me. I think no surprises here. The first 4, Grenard, Van Ginkel, the Rook Dog, Dallas Turner, and Patrick Jones, the second, or your 4. The 5th one, I think, there's a lot of, like, this is where it's tough, Dave. I think where one of the tough decisions are going to be made. Gabe Murphy didn't play any of the preseason game, but was like one of the standouts in training camp, OTAs up until that point. But if you haven't seen him play in the preseason, how can you have him making the team unless you're absolutely convinced that what you saw when he's playing against his teammates is the real thing? Bo Richter, great first game, played a pretty strong game, and against the Brownies was much quieter yesterday. But I think he's intriguing. And then Andre Carter II, who I thought played excellent against the Browns, and he had some strong moments yesterday, and as well as playing a ton of special teams. So does Richter. I have Carter making the team right now over Richter and Gabe Murphy. I think that the Vikings, it might be risky, but because Murphy has not played at all in the preseason, I think you might be able to sneak him on the practice squad because the teams don't have anything other than college tape on him right now to base whether they want to pick him up or not. And so it would be a risk, but I think that that's something that the Vikings might try. And I think that Carter, again, somebody that they kept on the roster all last year. They developed him. He looks like he's getting better, just like Hall is, keeping in mind the competition he's been playing against the past 3 games. But he came on the last 2 games. They got him playing a lot of special teams. I think that he makes it right now again. But that last 5th guy, that could shift depending on who's available after Tuesday. But right now I have Carter making the team. I think I haven't seen a whole lot of roster projections where others agree with me on that one, though.
I don't know. Obviously Grenard, Van Ginkel, Turner are it. I don't think Jihad Ward's done enough to make it. However, some people believe he should. Patrick Jones is meh. Carter, there's some good things, and there's some still stuff that needs to develop. We kept hearing about Gabriel Murphy all summer long, and then he got hurt. And then Bo Richter, I like what I saw from Bo Richter. So
I think he's a guy, Richter, who you actually don't have to put on the 53 to keep him this year.
And develop him. So
yeah.
Aaron, practice squad is 16 players, I believe. And I think 4 of them can be vets. Vested veterans. So that is your edge rushers. Now, off-ball linebackers, your middle linebacker types.
I had 1,
4 or 3.
I got us keeping 4 with Cashman, Pace Jr. Grigier Hill is going to be there because he can come in there. He started in the past, and he's he's going to be a core special teams guy, and it's killing me a bit. We talked about Dallas Gant. I would love if the roster was bigger. I would keep Dallas Gant. I think that.
Frozen. The Arctic chill came down. He is above the Arctic Circle, but he is frozen. He'd like to keep Gant. We'll see. I agree is for Cashman, Pace, Grugier, Hill, and Asamoah, but Asamoah, it to me is also a trade possibility. They might want to do that with him. Don't know why. But they could do that as well. But I think there's going to keep 4 in the house, 4 on the roster, no matter who that bottom person is. And those bottom guys, the 2 that are backing up, Cashman and Pace, will have to be special teamers by far. They will have to be. I wonder if Darren's computer just took a dump, which is possible. Now, interior defensive line. Now, this is one that I find interesting and gets stickies. Obviously, we got Harrison Phillips. He's going to make the squad. Jonathan Bullard is going to make the squad. I think Jerry Tillery, even though he's been hurt, is going to make it. Those are your 3 starters. Then you get to your backups, your rotational pieces. I don't have any hopes for Jaquelin Roy. He played yesterday and not much of anything. So we'll see. Brian, Darren mentions Gant and then froze. Gant's probably out. We'll find out. On the interior, like I said, Jaquelin Roy didn't seem to do anything. Levi Drake Rodriguez, I've got making the squad. So that's 4 right there. And then you've got to get Jonah Williams, nah. James Lynch, nah. Taki Taimani is doing well. Now, whether will he make it all the way through to practice squad, I don't know. And then you get Tyler Manoa and Jalen Redmond. Jalen Redmond had a good game yesterday, but I'm not sure if it's good enough. But I think they might try to get him on the practice squad as well. And Darren is back. Was it the internet or was it your computer?
Dum Dum Darren had taken his computer downstairs earlier in the morning, and so when I brought it back upstairs, I didn't plug in the power cord, so I ran out of power.
To back up real quick on the, you talked about Gant, and that's when you froze.
Yes. I would love to keep Gant. I think he's been really active. He's been a guy that I've noticed has really popped, and especially the past 2 games. Really a rangy linebacker to me. They got him covering running backs and tight ends, and seems to be doing a good job of it. And a bit of a tackle machine. Again, misses I think a few too many tackles, bounces off guys a bit too much. So I think he needs to get stronger. I think that. So I would love to keep him. And Drew Bunting said last week he didn't think Gant would, if you try to put him on the practice squad, somebody would snap him up. But I don't think that the Vikings are ready to have him make the final 53 at this point, and they're going to try to put him on the practice squad.
Okay, good. All right. I'm getting an echo from somewhere. Interior defensive line, Phillips, Bullard, Tillery make the squad. Those are your 3 starters.
Yep.
Who else?
Well, I reluctantly, it's killing me not to have Taki Taimani make the final 53, because PFF has him as the highest graded defensive player of anybody who's played 50 snaps on the Vikings by a wide margin. And I think that the eye test suggests that that's not bogus rankings, that I would agree with that. But I think that Levi Drake Rodriguez is making the team, Dave. Just the again, with the Vikings see something in him. They used a draft pick on him, their last one. But I think that what they hope,
your head coach, who's an offensive guy, is slobbering all over him on the air. Yes, he's making the squad.
But he has done things worthy of the slobber, I think, at times, right? Like even though yesterday he had batted down a pass. He's not the tallest guy, but he's got it's not just the motor, Dave. I think he's got a pretty refined pass rushing moves for a guy who played where he played, and he creates some havoc on there. He doesn't always make, an eye-popping play, but he never stops trying to. And sometimes he does get there. And I think that he's a player that you just can't. You need a player like that on your team.
I like to describe him as being disruptive.
Yes, he is. He has to be accounted for on the line. He's not just going to stay. If he gets blocked, he's not just going to stay blocked. He's going to try to do something to get unblocked and cause a problem for you. And so I don't think there's any way he does not make the team. And I think he's going to be a rotational guy.
Okay,
the other guy,
that's
4. Jonah Williams is the other guy I think is going to make the team. He didn't play at all yesterday. The Vikings seem to like him, even though he's in preseason. He hasn't really flashed either, but he's a veteran. He's played significant amount of snaps with the Rams in the past. He's kind of a Jonathan Bullard type where he's not going to excite you by anything he does, but he's probably not going to hurt you with anything he does either. And sometimes along the defensive line, that is valuable, I guess.
Mm-hmm. And then they keep Taki Taimani on the practice squad.
And and that's the other thing. Like, although you do have a question here where, like in the past we've said, who's our nose tackle, right? Like who's going to play nose? Harrison Phillips is not a true nose tackle, but they put him there because they didn't really have anybody who worth a snot who could do anything.
Right, LDR isn't a true nose tackle.
No, either. He is not. No, he is not. But they're probably going to have to play him there when they have 3 defensive linemen on there, when Phillips is not in the game and they have 3 defensive linemen. However often that happens, which didn't happen a whole lot last year. We didn't have 3 defensive linemen on the field a ton last year in Brian Flores' defense. That may change this year. So Taimani, I think, he's a guy, I think, with the position he plays and the fact that he's not a pass rush threat, I think you can get him on the practice squad and be pretty confident he's not going to get snapped up by somebody else, and you'll be able to develop him. And then, Jake Roy, bye-bye. It's been nice knowing you, but he's just not done anything in preseason to warrant a roster spot. If he doesn't look any better than he did last year, and if you're a 5th round draft pick, you've got to show some progress, and he has not shown it.
Right. And it very well could. Gaetano, yes. If a player gets claimed, that player, if we put somebody on waivers and they get claimed, that player has to go on the 53 man of whoever claims him. So at the time thereof. Now, with players going off on the waivers, they basically become free agents at that point, and the Vikings may say, we want you back, but there may be another team that says, we want you on our practice squad, and we're offering you more, and that can happen as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's not quite the same thing, but I believe.
I guess the good thing out of all of this, Dave, is that I think that there's several players at several positions where we're like, that's a tough call. I don't feel like we've had that same conversation the past 2 or 3 off.
Right. There was some easy calls.
Yeah. Where, and that speaks to the depth improving, which is something we talked about, I think, a week or 2 ago, with these preseason showings where our backups and the backups to the backups are outperforming the other team's backups and backups to the backups, where we used to just get worked the previous 2 preseasons when those guys would go in there against the other team's guys.
Yep. And of course, for the specialists, they're already locked in. Will Reichard, Ryan Wright, and Andrew DePaulo as your 3. That's not going to change. So
not going to change.
That makes your 53-man roster. And we're going to find out as the festivities start. I'm already seeing some I don't know if they're transactions or just rumors across the web of different players going to be released, whatever. And between now and Tuesday at 3:00 Central, all this has to be done. And usually you can wait about 30 minutes after that to make sure all the teams have their paperwork in, and New York has it. So, but they could be doing it right now.
Yeah.
As Kevin O'Connell said, it's the worst 48 hours of the year for him.
Well, yeah. No fun telling somebody that they don't have a job anymore.
Right. As well as staying up and watching film. The Kwesi and his boys are up watching film all over the place. You know, not just for the Vikings. They probably have all that done, but they're looking at all the 31 other teams, identifying positions where they might need help and somebody may become available.
A lot of work.
It is. Well, folks, that is it for today's show. It's been a long one, but we made it through. And I want to thank everybody that's joined us today. There's been quite a few of them. Love seeing those numbers. Darren, any last words?
No, sir. Just waiting for Tuesday to see if our grand predictions are anything close to a reality.
There's always going to be a surprise.
Yes.
Guaranteed. Yeah. If not, we can call ourselves experts. With that, what do we say?
We say, SKOL Vikings, baby.
SKOL Vikings. Like, subscribe, and ring the bell, and rate us on your favorite podcast aggregator. Darren and Dave, thank you for watching this episode of Two Old Bloggers. We look forward to seeing you on every show on the new Vikings First and SKOL. You can find our podcast as part of the Fans First Sports Network. Sports takes for the fan, from the fan. SKOL, everybody!